You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, you were pocketing money from the lobbying firm Navis.
That is false.
Owned by your,
That is not true, Mr. Cooper.
it's in your public disclosures.
That is not true.
Who paid you? So you have received not 1 cent from Navis Group. Is that correct?
You said that I was pocketing money, which is not true.
Did
I've
you
not made.
receive money from the Navis Group?
I have not made any income. I've not worked for any client since being elected. So
How
you
much
stated
money?
a falsehood.
How much money have you received from the Navis Group since you were appointed to cabinet?
I have received funds into my business that were cleared through the ethics commissioner that happened while I was a private citizen. All of that information, all of those activities were while I was a private citizen. When I transitioned from being a private citizen to a public citizen, I spoke numerous times to the team of the ethics commission, and
So
I received those payments are in those funds are in the disclosure. And if you want to know how much money I made as a private citizen, I direct you to the Commissioner of Ethics.
I ask you then to just answer the question. How much money were you paid by Navis Group? How much?
That
Since you were
information is
appointed
with
to
the
cabinet.
conflict
Well,
of
just say
interest,
the-
and
provide the number.
I have not made any funds. Now, Mr. Chair, Mr. Cooper is trying to indicate that somehow I had only one client or only one relationship while I was private
Okay,
consultant.
Minister,
give you an example
since
of
you're
some of the
not,
other clients
since you
if you
won't
like.
answer the question,
Mr. Buzinoff, Mr. Cooper, Standing Order 11.2 dictates that members keep their questions relevant to the matter, which the committee is reviewing. We're reviewing the supplementary estimates 2023-2024.
well, I, with respect, Mr. Chair, I have,
How you're making the relationship between the estimates and your line of question. I would just remind you to keep your line of questioning relevant
Well,
to the matter.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, do you think it is ethical for you as a sitting cabinet minister to have received payments from a lobbying firm that was owned by your business partner, that was lobbying your own department and
That's
secured
false. That's not true, Mr.
$110
Cooper.
million in federal contracts?
So, Mr. Chair, I'll entertain the questions because I'm happy to set the record straight. Let's start with the funds, the grants in question to the Edmonton International Airport, which for colleagues who may not have been to Edmonton recently or in a while is the 5th largest airport in the country. Conservative governments, liberal governments have funded the Edmonton International Airport. It is a major hub of supply chain, not just for Western Canada, but for the whole country. And this is a grant that went from Transport Canada
Minister,
to Edmonton.
Minister, I asked you
Mr.
a
Chair,
question.
I would
yes
like to finish
or no? Do you think that it is
answer
ethical?
to my question.
Do you think it is ethical that your business partner was lobbying your department?
That is not
Do you
true,
think
Mr.
that's
Chair.
ethical?
That is not true.
What part
No
of it is not true?
department that
What
I was
part
ever
of it is
part
not
of
true? Are you
was
denying,
contacted by this company.
Minister
Mr. Chair?
Boissonneau, that
A point of order, and I will remind you again, Mr. Cooper, you're new to the committee. The subject matter, the committee's agenda approved for today was the minister appearing on the estimates, sub-estimates. And I would remind members to keep their questions relevant to the agenda the committee adopted. Mr. Cooper, to the supplementary estimates, please.
are you denying that
Mr.
Ms.
Cooper,
Poon,
to the supplementary estimates,
I have
please.
broad latitude in asking questions, and this goes to the heart of the integrity of this minister and his suitability to continue in his
Bring your
office.
question
He has
relevant.
an ethical
Mr.
cloud
Cooper, bring your
hanging
question
over his
relevant,
head, and
or I'll
Canadians
rule you
deserve
out of order.
answers.
Bring your question relevant.
Minister, have you read the Conflict of Interest Act?
Mr. Chair, I've read sections of the Conflict of Interest Act, but more importantly, when I transitioned from public life, from private life to public life, I spent numerous meetings, numerous phone calls with the team at the Conflict of Interest so that my business interests could be wrapped up in a way that meets all obligations under the Act. And Mr. Chair, if I can point to these two
I have asked
stories in the press, they indicate that I followed my obligations,
Minister,
and that is what's on the record.
Minister, I asked you a question. You said you did read the Conflict of Interest Act. Good. Section 4 of the Conflict of Interest Act provides a conflict of interest occurs when a public officer holder exercises a duty or function that provides an opportunity to further their private interests or another person's private interests. That's exactly
That is not what is
you did,
taking place
Minister.
here. No, not at
Not
all.
only Did Navis
Mr.
Group
Chair,
lobby your
if there
department?
was a contravention of the
You handed
Conflict
a
of Interest and Ethics Act,
$9.74 million
the conflict
check
of interest
to
would have said that.
Navis's client. You furthered your business partner's interests in delivering
is
funding
simply not
for
true.
their client, and you
That is not
furthered
true,
your
Mr.
own
Cooper.
interests because you were
That is
being
not true.
paid by Navis.
Mr.
is not
Cooper,
true.
bring yourself to relevance to the
Minister-
matter. You know the rules of the House,
Minister-
honorable member.
Minister,
And
I
the
would-
constant attack that you've been displaying on questioning another member, remarks will question the member's integrity is not in order. We're here again to discuss the supplementary estimates, which you have not questioned anything on at this
Minister-
point, but it's your time.
Min-
You
min-
have another minute and a half.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, you know what that's called? It's called a blatant conflict of interest,
That
and
is
it's
simply
also
not true,
called
Mr. Cooper.
self-dealing and
The
corruption.
Conflict of
That's what it's
Interest and
called,
Ethics
Minister. I'm
Commissioner's
going to ask you
Office
this question, since you're not
indicated in
interested
the
in answering
article
many
that I
any
followed all
questions
the
here.
rules. Have you
I'm
read
gonna
the
ask
article,
you
Mr.
this.
Cooper? Have you read the article? Let me ask you this. Do you hang out with
You're gonna
lobbyists
answer my
at your weekend,
questions.
at your
I'll
weekly
ask you
meetings with Jenny
questions. You're
Byrne?
here to answer
Is that how
questions.
you spend your time on Wednesdays, hanging out with the
You're here
lobbyists
to, you're here
at
to
your own
answer
caucus
questions,
meetings?
Minister. Minister, why did you
Pretty
not
easy to
make
talk to
a
Jenny about
public-
lob laws, isn't it?
Why did you not make a public declaration of recusal from the activities connected to Ms. Poon's lobbying efforts in relation to the Edmonton International Airport?
Mr. Cooper, I followed all of the rules and sought advice from the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commission's team to set up my business, to set up my life transition from private life to public life. I followed all the rules. It's even in the articles. There is no contravention of the Conflict of Interest or Ethics
Well-
Act, and that is stated by the Conflict of Interest and Ethics
Cooper.
team.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Okay, thank
Part of
you.
groups that aren't in the labor force to the degree we would like to see them.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Mr. Barrett for 5 minutes, please. Mr. Barrett?
Minister, how much have you been paid by Navis Group?
Mr. Barrett, that is a matter that took place while I was a private citizen, and those issues, if you want to find out how much I made as a private citizen, I refer you to the Ethics Commissioner.
What are your holdings of the one numbered company that you have, 2050877 Alberta Limited?
That is not my company.
Do you have a numbered company?
I do, and when I was working with the Commissioner of Ethics to wrap up my private affairs to become a public official again, they indicated that I should use the legal name of the holding company, which I did.
So you do have a numbered company?
I do, but it's not the one you
And
mentioned.
you have a trading name for that company?
I do not.
So what's the legal name of the company?
22566956 Alberta Limited.
Okay, and what does it hold?
It holds investments.
Does it have any interest in the Navis company?
No, it does not.
You have draw income from that company, though?
I do not.
Mr. Barrett, I remind you, but I'm going to give flexibility because both sides strayed on this issue. The only ones that stood to relevancy was Madame Shabbat and Madame Zerillo on the matter before the committee, but the minister did elaborate. I understand the rules, Mr. Cooper. Mr. Barrett, you have the floor.
So 2256956 Alberta Limited, does it or did it own the GHI, Global Health Initiative, the pandemic supply resale company? Does it own that?
It has, there's shares in that holding company.
There are shares in that company, in GHI? Okay. So since you've been a minister, have you received any payments from Navis Group?
As is declared in my conflict of interest and ethics submission, yes, and that was organized with the conflict of interest and ethics.
Okay, so let's just back this up, because Mr. Cooper asked you the same question, and I'm asking you the question. And I asked how much you've been paid, and you said, well, none of that happened since I was a minister. So there's a bit of confusion here. How much have you been paid since you've been a minister by that company?
So Mr. Barrett, I'll give you an example. There is, Mr. Chair, some thinking here that I have had one client. Westminster Foundation for Democracy was a client. The Global Equality Caucus was a client. The United Nations Development Program was a client. The Black Gold School Division was a client. And Mr. Barrett, I'm going to respond to you here. There is pardon?
Xenex?
Xenex is a company. It's the other company that I own that is also dormant. It's also wrapped up and fully disclosed. And let me be really clear. Part of the reason that it indicates that
Minister,
funds
the
are
question
owed to
was
my
how
company.
much. The question was
Michael,
how much. This is a really long story to just
No,
tell
it's
me
not.
how much.
The
How
United
much?
Nations Development Program still owes the company funds, and that's 2.5 years later. So that is why you see the declaration. And if you want to understand how much money I made as a private citizen,
I want to understand how
then
much
you
you're
can
getting
refer
paid
to
by
the
this company while you're a
Commission on
minister.
Ethics.
A question which is not relevant to what the committee is meeting for today. And this committee met at length to set its agenda for today. But you're appearing as a committee member today, and you do have the right to direct questions in relevancy. If you're going to continue, I will then ensure that the minister has a chance to respond should he choose. So, Mr. Minister.
Answer that question before, Mr. Barrett.
This is it's really unbelievable because you haven't answered the question, and it was a complete. The answer you gave was a complete non sequitur to the question that was asked. You
Barrett,
have
that's
a
not true.
duty to arrange your private affairs in a manner that prevents a conflict of interest. But in this case, you arranged your private affairs in the manner of in the matter of $110 million federal grant to a federally regulated organization with federal government representatives
There's
on
no,
its board,
Mr. Chair,
to which
Mr.
they
Chair,
benefited monetarily.
that is not
Mr.
true
Barrett,
whatsoever.
I'm going to give the minister a chance to respond
Ju-
to a
so-
question that is not
I haven't
relevant.
finished asking the question.
Well, I
It-
made it.
I can't answer a
asked,
question that's full of
the
falsehoods,
minister
Mr.
And
Chair.
he
to
interrupted me
respond.
throughout the
Yes,
question.
and
Because your
you're in
question's full of
you're
falsehoods.
questioning in an area that the rules of the House adopted is it's really it's black and white. And Mr. Barrett, we're here.
Mr. Long was allowed to proceed on a line of question that was favorable to the minister. My questions, just because they're uncomfortable for the minister,
No,
I think that
Yes, and I agreed to let him go, providing you let the minister respond.
But
I will ask the minister.
I didn't
to
finish
respond.
asking the question.
Okay, then finish your question, Mr. Barrett. Quickly.
Minister, did you participate in funding announcements for this organization from a company that you are still cashing checks from?
No, Mr. Chair,
Well, that's not
I
true.
am the minister for Alberta, and if there's an announcement that's happening in my province and I can go to it, I will go to it. At no point
Even if you
since
got them the
Mr.
money?
Barrett,
Even
Mr.
if you got
Barrett,
them the money and they got
that
paid
is
for it?
not true. That is simply not true.
Minister, the opportunity very quickly and shortly, because this is going to end. We're
Sure.
going to move on. Your time has gone by. I've allowed you
I
to
have-
stay in the question.
Mr. Chair,
Minister,
to be
wrap it
really
up
clear,
quickly.
crystal clear, I have never had line authority to provide any funding to the Edmonton International Airport, or quite frankly, any of the clients that I mentioned. I've not been Minister of Transport. I've not been Minister of Prairies Can. Will I announce something that's in my region that supports a major airport for the jobs? Absolutely, I will. No monies were transferred, and that grant went to
Thank
the
you,
Edmonton
Mr.
Airport, not a
Barrett.
company in
Thank you,
question.
Mr. Barrett. Thank you, Mr. Buzz.